All right. Good morning, everybody. We are live here at HF Pod. Thank you for joining us. This is I guess we're continuing on in this series. I don't even know what number it is. Is it 14, 13, 12?
13.
13.
13.
Lucky 13.
Lucky 13. We have a lot to talk about. We're talking about summer 2015. I do want to ask you guys a couple questions, but I do first want to just say that I just came from playing basketball and I'm sweaty and I thought, I should clean myself up for the podcast. And then I realized people aren't here for, nice looking people dressed up. Like you guys both cover that. So I'll just keep it focused on the jams because really this is just about the jams. Brian's got his flannel and his Cubs hat as always. Megan is looking amazing, even though it's only 9:09 a.m. Eastern time. I don't know how she does it.
Nope,
Nobody knows how
no
she does
idea.
it, but she does
Thanks,
it.
guys. I've been up for a while.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about summer 2015. I guess first let me play a quick voicemail to get us started from a listener, Pat, who actually met recently, who left a message. It turns out people are enjoying this series. Who knew?
What?
Hey, it's amazing.
It's really great. Okay, ready?
I'm so glad.
Hey, RJ, Megan, and Brian. This is Pat calling from Brooklyn, New York, where it is extremely hot. We're in the middle of an intense heat wave. But I just wanted to give a call to give my huge appreciation for you guys. I loved the Summer 2003 Best 25 Tours episode. And I actually just finished doing a run to the 725 Charlotte show, which I believe Megan mentioned was one of her favorite shows from that tour. Just a quick side note that I had the pleasure of meeting RJ. We grabbed some coffee a few months back in New York at my office, and we chatted about fish, we chatted about podcasting. But one thing we talked about was how much one of my favorite things to do, one of my favorite ways to listen to fish is while running. And you guys have just provided the perfect running soundtrack for me and my runs this whole spring and summer. It's just been such a joy to listen to y'all talk about your favorite shows and jams from these tours and hit play and go for runs. So I just wanted to thank y'all so much. I look forward to listening to your show every week and keep doing what you're doing. Thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
So Pat's awesome. He's great. Mario, who's watching, loving this series. Thank you. Man twist. I don't know what that means, but we might find out later. We might not.
Maybe.
We have to find out later.
We might find out.
Do some digging.
Yeah.
So guys, speaking of things that take up a lot of time, like this project, there was a new live bait release. Yesterday? I looked at it and I was like, I would love to listen to that someday when I'm old, when I'm retired.
Someday when we don't have 27 shows to listen to in a week.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think that's going to be really cool. There looks like there's some good stuff on there, Brian. Is there anything that stuck out to you if you were able to skim through?
The Piper, what's the use to open it up from 9/11 2000 Great Woods? That's a really overlooked run from a tour that is not on our list. We covered that back in 2020 as part of the lead up to the Undermine launch. Like what we talked about in summer 99 and what we will talk about in our next episode, hint, 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 the millennial sound, the grooves, the everything kind of circulating around Fishman and Gordo with Trey and Paige kind of giving us melodies over the top. You get really nicely in fall 2000, especially those early shows. And that Piper is just outstanding. I was really glad to see, it's always fun. It's always kind of funny when they put soundboard released jams from 3.0 on these. Because like, okay, we already have this. But sometimes you get these moments where the band or where Shapiro highlights something that may be forgotten. And I thought the waves from Bethel, not the tech waves, we all love that. The waves from 527. Trey gave an interview a couple days after that where he talked about how he was really influenced by the guitar playing of Alex Scally of Beach House, whose album Teen Dream is, I know, one of our favorites here at the pod. You can really hear that in there, and they've done a little bit of extra mixing on it, so it just sounds super crisp. It sounds like really full, and that is definitely worth your time. But always love these live baits. They're kind of the first moment where you're like, oh my god, summer tour is coming back. This is great.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff in here that like I remember from tapes, like there's like even going back to the University of Delaware 21393 show where they have something on there. We get the Bowie from the night before the night from Denver 97, which is great. And then that I think the Taste, the 11/26/97, that was always one of my favorite fall 97 shows, and they should just release that.
That whole second set just like flows, and the first set is it's just like it's a little songy, but it's like really well played, and I think the Taste really showcases that. It's just this band was not just a funk band in fall 97, which we will talk about at some point before the end of the year, I promise you all, and you hear it in that Taste. They were still a rock band.
I also think that 8/12/96 should just be released as a show
right at this point.
At this point.
That 8/10/96, the segment from Alpine, that whole tour leading up to Clifford Ball kind of gets overlooked. That show is about as classic mid 90s, no Type 2, just like very joyful, happy Fish in a great way. And that segment really showcases it.
So see, we haven't even listened to Live Bait yet, but we know that it's going to be awesome. we have what else do we have going on? Anything else we need to talk about?
I mean, we got Goose tour happening right now. Do you guys want to start to go about figuring out what's going on there? Do you have like
I'm seeing
two
Goose
thoughts?
tonight.
You are.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I saw Goose 2 weeks ago, something like that. I don't know, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, and I saw him in New Hampshire as well, at the festival at Northlands, and I thought they sounded incredible. I have an interview with Peter coming out soon when I have time to produce it. And he talks a lot about what's been going on backstage and vibes with the band and with how they've been thinking about jamming lately. And they're really in a sweet spot. And there's so much good energy behind the band right now. And they're all having so much fun together. And it's exciting to see where they're going. Every morning I wake up and I don't have time to stream the shows because I'm just listening to HF Pod Prep all the time. And so I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh my God. And I text these guys and I say, did Goose just play a 3-song second set last night? And indeed they did. So I'm very excited to see them tonight. And I'm bringing my 2 daughters to their first jam band show, or I guess I should say indie groove show, but you know, the first mom show. And then I'm bringing my sister and my sister-in-law tonight. So if you're in Charlotte and you see a huge girl gang, you have to come say hi to us and make my daughters fall in love with this music. It's no pressure,
No pressure. That's
pressure.
awesome.
It's gonna be really fun.
I'm going to see them twice next week, which I'm excited about. So I guess, Brian, next week we should be talking about them in depth, because then all 3 of us will have seen at least one show.
Yeah, I'll hold all my thoughts until you've seen them, because I know you haven't listened to a single note.
It's okay. You can talk. You can say whatever you want. You know me.
Can we do a bonus episode next week?
We can do a bonus. Yeah. I'll just say I really like the way that they're playing with quiet music. That is something that was not something we heard a lot last year, and it is a dynamic that adds a ton of layers and elements to their jams that I'm really, really excited about.
Yeah, a lot of patience.
So we are on 2015 summer tour here. This is the fan vote was number 18. It was number 13 for us. We are getting into these top 15 tours where there are, I think it's mostly overlap at this point. There might be a little bit of difference in terms of the exact numbers, but it's pretty close. I guess, Megan, I was going to talk about Fare Thee Well, but of course that's kind of part of the story of this tour, or at least the lead up. I thought going through this is kind of the opposite of last week, summer 2003, in that like it's not as, I mean, the jams are great, but it's fun to watch the new material develop, and to the song selection and the song, the show structure. I wish I had time to listen to more full shows, I guess is my point. Whereas I think with summer 2003, you kind of get the gist. But I guess, do you guys want to do the tour overview first, or do you want me to ask my big question?
Before you ask that, you just made me think of a question that I have about this series overall, and we're like about halfway through it. Would you mind if I
Yeah.
ask that just to get your thoughts?
Yeah, please.
So I think that we as a team did a fairly good job scheduling it this year, giving ourselves 25 necessary episodes rather than 40 last year, which I think by
Mm.
the end of the year felt like a huge race for us to get to the finish line. We
Yep.
made it, but it was
You
like,
did.
oh my God, we have to, like, the next 8 weeks, we have to do this. So I think we like inherently went into this year with it, but we also added more music, and some of these
So much
tours,
more.
looking at you, winter spring 93, are like
Yeah.
176 shows with like 2 song variations and set lists that, like, I think tested our will in a 7-day period. Some of us have adapted the approach here by like getting so far ahead so that they don't feel stressed, but like there's stressful
I don't know
moments
Only
who
where
that
one
it's
of
would
like
us.
be.
Only one of
only
us.
10, like I have 10 days to listen to 16 tours. No, but do you guys think that this series, like at the halfway point, would have worked better as a not timed, we have to do this in 2024, like we could do this as long as it takes, and we listen to every show of a tour, or we listen to many more shows of the tour, we don't have as many
Mm.
deadlines? Or do you feel by the end of the tour that you're kind of like, okay, I got the sound, I'm ready to talk about it. Yes, I wish I had time to listen to a few more jams or shows here, but ultimately, like, I just want to move on to the next sound here. Like, do you feel so overwhelmed by it?
Mm.
Megan, you go first.
Well, I think this is such an interesting project because you're kind of overdosing on one tour at a time. And so I think you tend to feel almost a little bit like you don't get sick of it, but you get a little bit like you're just like inundating yourself with this sound and you have to digest it. But I think that and so it also makes it feel almost like less special because you're not hearing it also in like you're comparing it to all these other tours. So it's like, oh, does it sound as good as 2003, or does it sound better than 2018? And you're thinking about so much of that, and you're also like, I think, internalizing the context too of like where the band was at the time. So it's overwhelming, I think, and also can take away that feeling of like, oh my God, when I heard 2015 Summer for the first time, I just loved it. I thought it was amazing. And now you're listening to it and you're like, I don't know, was it that amazing? But I think that's just kind of the project of listening to so much in such a short amount of time. Because some of us are not ahead and some of us are cramming for these and listening to 26 shows and trying to digest them. But to your question of if it would have been better, I actually think the way that it's spread out has been perfect because it forces you also to really be smart in how you're thinking about these tours and looking at them. And like, I have such a system now. Like, I'll take the tour and I'll look at it and say, okay, there's 26 shows. What are the top ranked shows? I'll go through the jam charts, then I'll piece together like which shows do I want to listen to in entirety. And it's just forced me to be really academic in a way that I have so appreciated and just totally loved. And I think that if you spread it out further, you would lose some of the comparison, which makes it challenging, but also which makes it really interesting. This middle part of this series is so fascinating because we're jumping eras, sounds, like skill ability. It's just so cool to listen to 2003 and 2015 back to back. And I think that if you had spread it out, you wouldn't have that much, I don't know, context, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it, especially since there's going to be a period where we're going to be like firmly rooted in the Clinton administration. And it's like the sounds are going to be, in some cases, more dynamic and crazy that they change that much in like a 6-month period in time. But also a lot of the tools that they're using are very, very similar. But what are your thoughts,
Yeah.
RJ?
Well, it's funny because what you're talking about relates to the thing that I was going to mention before. Because I guess to me the main thing is that there's way too much music to listen to on a week to week
Yeah.
basis. So for the first time, like this tour was the first time that I had gone through and really like said, okay, I'm not going to listen to this whole tour. So how do I get the gist of it and remind myself I've listened to this tour so many times, I was there, etc. And so you can only listen to so much of it, but I think by forcing yourself to like pick and choose, it does relate to what the point I was going to make, which is that there's a lot more holes in these tours than I think we imagine when we think of these tours.
Yeah.
You know, like when I was going back through, because it's and the question here, how many shows from these tours do you actually listen to? I mean, I think full shows from summer 2015, I only listened to maybe one, but like I listened to music from all of them. But you realize going through like what's essential from these tours, and I think
Yeah.
you realize that there's like even, I mean, maybe it's going to be different when we get to the top 5 where it's like, but I still think when you have the time restriction, you're going to go to a show and you're going to look at it and be like, okay, I remember like this one jam from the show, but I can probably like skip this show. And I feel like that to
Mhm.
me is a big takeaway, that like now that we're getting to the, you know, the real serious parts of this project, that there's still some gaps, you know, where you can basically, it makes me feel great when I'm like, okay, great, I can skip, you know, I got 2 shows I can skip over here so I can make it to the ones that I really need to make it to. But that's
Nostalgia is a
kind
hell
of,
of a drug in that
yeah.
standpoint. Like
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
like we think, because, and I will get into it, like there are reasons why summer 2015 felt really special in the moment and lingers 9 years later.
hmm
But
Mhm.
also there are shows like Austin and Dallas back to back, and there are like, I think Kansas City has like one great moment. Alpine night 1 is kind of like it just happened.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of Merryweather night 2. Like everyone talks about Merryweather night 1, nobody talks about Merryweather night 2, with good reason. These things happen on every tour. Like Cleveland happened in fall 1997, as we'll talk about at some point here in the future. And so yeah, there's always that ebb and flow. There's those really great moments. It's just like what lingers within the kind of larger consciousness of the fan base.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that this is a good example of, you know, there's a question I have, which we'll get to, which is just, you know, what's going on with Fish in Texas? Like it just, you know, like I was so happy when I scrolled to those shows and I was like, oh great, okay, I can like, that just saved me, you know, a few
You can
hours.
jump
But
forward to Atlanta.
Totally, I know.
but
It is a relief. It is a relief. It's like the
it's not
worst
really
week of the show.
fair.
It looks so
It's
good.
not really fair, but it is true. Yeah, it's super fun, and I think it's a good. I think we did it in the right way. I mean, having, spoiler alert, we have a week off next week, so you know we're like, that will be nice, because then I can finally listen to a Goose show, for example. You know,
Exactly.
um,
Or some
Megan,
new music.
or some new music. I mean, let's not get crazy. You know, let's just let's not get too crazy here with what we can listen to. Megan, what's this tour all about, Megan?
Yeah, they start off the year, they play those 3 days in Miami, which is part of the 2014 New Year's Eve run. And then, of course, Trey spends quite a bit of time preparing for Fare Thee Well. And he has those 5 shows. He's got the 2 in California and 3 in Chicago. And then they set off on this summer tour, which is 26 shows. They start on the West Coast. They go down Oregon to California to Texas to the Southeast, and then to the Midwest and the Northeast. And they end the tour at Magnaball in Watkins Glen. And then, of course, they go to Labor Day. They go to Dicks for the 6th year in a row and play the very famous Thank You Encore to end the whole summer. And there's 11 songs that are debuted this year. 6 of them are originals. And some of these songs obviously are so huge still today, like No Men's and Blaze On. And then you've got things like Mercury and Shade. And there are 91 jam chart entries. So about 3.3 jams per show.
Crazy.
And it felt that way. That felt like a big leap forward
Right?
at the moment.
Yeah. So okay, I guess, Brian, what are some of your thoughts just in terms of the I guess themes from this tour? Like what's the first thing you think about when you think about this, aside from Magnaball, which I think is the main theme?
I think that this tour reminds me, like if I were to compare this to any other tour, it reminds me the most of fall 2013, in the sense that you get another step forward in Fish jamming and kind of a defined sound, which was starting to become, a bit of a break from the way that they had sounded in the early 3.0 era. This felt like a new direction for them. There's kind of more layers to their jams. Overall, like you hear dissonance, modulation, atmosphere within their jams in a way that you hadn't been hearing. Like they were happier and more willing to hang in spaces musically that felt a little bit more dangerous and a little bit less certain. They weren't going like, okay, now we got to go for the major key peak to like really, pay things off for the audience. They allowed there was a lot of like work involved in listening to some of these jams for the first time, which really excited me. I think to Megan's point as well about the new songs, there were new songs in 2013 and 2014, and we were starting to get used to the idea that new songs were going to be a part of Fish going forward. This was the first time that the new songs hit almost immediately. Like there was
Mm.
pretty unanimous approval for No Men and No Man's Land and Blaze On. Blazon felt a little tongue in cheeky, but like once it jammed, people were like, I'm in, like whatever, just give it to me. No Men's immediately felt like a very classic Fish sounding groove. You had the Mutron effect, kind of, very high early in the start of the tour that made us feel like this was connected in some way to Fare Thee Well. But I think, and you said don't mention Magnaball, but I kind of have to briefly. The big thing that separates this tour from fall 2013 is Magnaball, is the fact that you had this festival at the end of it where the sound was able to build for a month or so and then really spill out in Magnaball and kind of point the direction forward of where the band was going to go musically. That said, and we'll get into it, like there are holes throughout this tour that are were less present in the moment when you kind of looked at it from a glass half full standpoint. When you look at it a little bit critically 9 years later, you realize how far they've come, because the way that they play today is leaps and bounds, ahead of where they played then, which probably wouldn't be possible without a tour like this.
I think that's a really important point, what you were saying at the end, Ryan, because this tour does have like awesome jams. It's got the bust outs. It has really well played classics. It's got rarities, return of the second jam and mics, but it also has a lot of heart and earnest emotion from the band, especially towards the end. And, I think about, we have 4 3.0 tours on our top 25 list. We have 2013, 15, 17, and 18. But this is the second kind of in terms of chronology. And when I was looking at those dates, I was realizing like, I think the band really needed these as kind of like touch points to know that they were headed in a direction of evolution and growth. I think it's really important that they had these every few years. Otherwise, I don't know if they would have kept taking risks that they did that moved them forward. If they hadn't had a year like 2015, would they have done the Baker's Dozen? I don't know. I think thinking about what this represented for the band, which is so obvious because Trey talks about it so explicitly in Denver, but I think it was really important for them. And if they hadn't had these tours at these certain points, I don't know if they would have kept trying new things like they did.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I think the one of the things for me, just to get into the shows, is this, like how I think we talk a lot about how the sound evolved and how the sound was influenced by the Fare Thee Well and by Trey's practicing. But the other thing to me is just like, you take this first show from Bend and they just come out like, I mean, those shows are great, I mean, they're
Yeah.
not like top 10 shows, but like for a tour opener, like even third song, so they debut How Many People Are You, which is fine after Stash Opener. But then this like Winter Queen that's just like so awesome. And
Yeah.
they're 3
Yeah.
songs into the tour and you're like, man,
It's
this
beautiful.
is
They're just
so
like
beautiful.
lingering in space. It's so
Yeah.
cool.
I mean,
Yeah,
such a great
it's really
call.
pretty.
and that set has a really good maze, and the debut of Mercury, which is really good with, I mean, obviously this whole Fare Thee Well thing is a huge part of it, but just like that first show is really, really, really good. And I think they just come in like really ready to play. And then, there's many peaks in this tour. Like, I feel like a lot of the tours we talk about, there's like a pretty clear arc, or it starts great and then it kind of like levels off. This has like multiple peaks with like
Yeah.
valleys in between, which I think
I
is a little
agree.
bit different.
Yeah, even like
Yeah,
the
I mean,
Shoreline show was amazing at the beginning too.
yeah,
And
you got an
I have
incredible second set there.
yeah, I love that show. And I have actually had a question. Sorry to cut you off there, Brian, but for you guys, do you think Trey was just so relieved to be playing with Fish again after playing the Fare Thee Well shows? Like, there's just such an energy that he brings to these shows. He's so much more assertive in this tour, and I just felt, do you think he was just like, okay, great, I got to spend all this time practicing playing these Fare Thee Well shows, and now I get to hit the road with Fish? Like, fuck yes.
I think it's a lot of things. I think that definitely has something to do with it. I think you're absolutely right. I think that was, I mean, probably to that point in his life, the biggest job opportunity he's ever had. Like
Mhm.
outside of Fish. It's a huge honor. Those shows were a massive deal at the time. I
Yeah.
think they still are. I remember watching them when they streamed them during 2020, and some of the music is rough, but like there's a special quality to that, and Trey really embodied part of what made that special, for everyone
Yeah.
watching from afar and from everyone who was there. As a Fish fan, I remember feeling an incredible sense of pride that like he was accepted in that world, and that he had moments like during the Bertha, like the third verse when he is singing about going into jail, and he, like he has this almost like release of being accepted on a mass scale. But I also think like you said, the practice had a lot to do with it. Like he practiced that entire winter. I think that you have this great fusion of him and Tom get together for this songwriting session, and they produce a song like Mercury,
Yeah.
far away from the rest of the world. I think that's I think that and Sense and Subtle Sounds are the two best post 90s Fish songs that have ever been written. They speak to the Fish energy, and they take the idea of what this band can do so much further. And I think a lot of it is excuse me, the work that they did over the previous 3 years, going back to summer 2012, where they really started testing themselves with the catalog. They really started testing
Yeah.
themselves with jamming, and it's really starting like that takes a long time, and it's really starting to
Yeah.
show itself on the stage. So I think it's a few things. I think just a quick shout out. Like, I'm so glad you mentioned this show 722, because it kind of exemplifies a couple things that make this tour so great in my mind. They cut down on the amount of songs that they played. Like if you look at a 2014 set list, there's like 12 or 13 songs in set 1. There's like 8 or 9 here, which allows certain songs to
Mhm.
stretch out, allows for the flow to be less impacted by like, we got to get in 2 bluegrass songs here, and then a Wilson, and then we're going to do a mid-set chalk dust because we got to raise the energy, or and like the second sets are like 5 to 7 songs, a 1 song encore. Like they're not using the full set time, and so they're allowing songs to breathe a little bit more. The flow is really nice. This show, the second night in Atlanta, the Nashville show you mentioned, the Mann night 2, like these all feel like shows that a year earlier they would have thrown 3 to 5 additional songs in, and it would have felt a
Yeah.
bit clunky. And here it's not like the craziest set list on paper, but when you listen to the music, it all flows really nicely, and one jam kind of leads to another. It's just really, really good stuff that you were not hearing that kind of nuance a year prior.
Yeah, for sure. That's all good, really great context. I guess in terms of the tour itself, I mean, do we want to get into some representative jams? I mean, are we
Do it.
ready?
Let's do it.
There's a lot, because like I said, there's a lot of peaks and valleys here, but I almost like kind of think we should go chronologically, but I don't
I
know.
think that's a good way to do it.
We can do that. Yeah.
I think
let's do
your
it.
point of the peaks and valleys is really it'll be interesting to hear where we go and where we don't go, because I think you're absolutely right. There are a few dead zones, but then
Yeah.
like rebound for like 3 shows, you're like, oh my god, this is the best tour ever, and then little easy, and then they'd rebound again. It's really wild to watch.
I mean, I think Megan mentioned this first night of Shoreline, the first 3 songs of the second set, which is kind of one big segment that you get, like the second blaze on. The twist
Yeah.
is really patient, really dynamic. Trey is playing with such confidence, and then the light, which is like so celebratory and upbeat and fun. It's just like a really amazing 40 or 50 minutes of music that is just, it's really inspiring to go back to. So I love that. And I don't think I go back to these shows because I focus on kind of the road to Magnaball. You know what I mean?
Totally. And this is like the first, just quickly going through it in my head. This is like the first 40-minute opening of set 2 segment of like uninterrupted music that we'd gotten since
Mm.
Randall's a year earlier.
Wow.
A lot of late 2014, you get into a cool jam segment and then you go into something else. And then maybe you'd get another one later in the set, and then you go into like the 3 songs to close out the second set. The fall tour was kind of a low point. This felt like, I'm just remembering it from the moment and just listening back now, it definitely just feels like a band that is rehearsed from the jump and doesn't need any time
Yeah.
to really kind of ease into it.
Yeah, this twist into light is just one of my favorite moments of the whole tour. It's so incredible, and Trey's just using that like growly effect filter like right away. It's really dark and beautifully textured. So much communication, absolutely gorgeous, like really clear open jam. And then the way it gets into the light, they've got the like I Know You Rider jamming. It's really galloping.
Oh yeah.
It's so good. And knowing it's at Shoreline, and I saw Fish in Shoreline, and there's just something like super special about being there and having them do the like hat tip to the dead there. It's just awesome. And then you've got, really gorgeous hood. It's really dark, but it has that perfect sunny build. And then just Mike's laying it down into that intro to Cavern. It's a really, really, really great second set. This is a really great show to be so early in the tour.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Brian. No, go ahead.
Well, I just want to call out a comment that I saw from about 20 minutes ago that I loved from Evie Dude. Summer 15 is the most 90s 3.0 tour. I don't know how to verbalize this, but like I agree with that entirely. Like it feels like it has a touchstone to an earlier age of Fish, and that blazon twist light coming at Shoreline, feeling that dead magic. You're absolutely right. Like having this be show number 3 of the tour, it felt like the band was tapping into something from their past while also looking ahead to the future. So I love this comment, and I think it speaks to the tour.
Well, so for me, then we jump forward 7 days to the 31st.
Yes.
One of my favorite
100%.
shows. So great.
What before I get there, what do you guys think it is with Texas? Seriously, it's really hard to find. Obviously besides the Bomb Factory and like those summer '97 shows, I think those are good shows. You can probably find exceptions, but it's just like they just don't play great shows in Texas.
No, yeah, I mean there are the outliers, but I just don't think that they have the swing that it takes to hang in Texas. Even Austin, like I saw Fish in Austin. I saw a couple good jams in 2018, but like the highlight of set 1 was Mike got really hot and took his pants off during the first set, and he was wearing shorts underneath, but like that was the highlight. I just think like they're so, and it's interesting because Trey was born in Texas, like his blood is from Texas, but
that dude's so East Coast. Come on, man.
That's the thing. Like they're just so bookish and nerdy and like kind of zany in a way that only kind of originates in Northeastern hippies. Like they come to Texas and they're just like, where the hell are we? Like it's like a different country.
But they do feel comfortable in Atlanta, of course, because
definitely.
we go down for this 7:31 show, which I remember. I think I've told this before. We did one of these shows for the 40 for 40, right?
Yeah, we did.
We did this show.
We did this show. Yeah,
31st.
I mean, I remember listening to this the next day on a run and just being like, "Wow, that was like probably the coolest jam I had heard from Fish in 3.0 to date."
Yeah.
Like I think that like the Tahoe Tweezer was great. There was some great stuff from 2013 and 2014, but this was like it just felt like a totally different level of jamming. And the longest version of Code Level Falls, of course, but there's like this peak that just is perfectly placed, but there's so much patience, and so it's very patient. And then like the transition into Martian Monster, which like at this point is when they're really using that Halloween 2014 material in like the perfect way. It's just, man, it's just incredible.
Yeah, Perp shouts out 46 Days Dogs, 46 Days from the Austin show. That was the lone highlight, and that was a good use of these chilling, thrilling songs.
Oh, it's so good. It's like they don't ever leave the jam and just layer the dogs right
It's so
inside of it.
cool.
It's
Yeah.
so good. And I'm
Yeah.
glad he mentioned that. Thanks, Brian, because like that is a real moment from those shows that I actually did listen to out of those shows. It's really good.
We talked about this Atlanta show last year, but like it's just worth noting. I think you're right, RJ. I had the same thought the morning after. Like, was that the best jam of 3.0 so far? It just felt so effortless. Felt like every man, I don't want to combine bands right now, but like I kind of have to from a quote standpoint. There was a great quote from Rick in the Goose article in the Atlantic yesterday. Holy shit, Goose was in the Atlantic, where he talks about improvisation is hearing someone else say something and pausing and being like, okay, what you just said is of value and I should respond to it. And that's a really challenging thing to do when like it's all free. And I think so many Fish jams from 2009 up until I don't know where the cutoff point is, but like this felt like a break from that. This like a lot of those jams felt like they would run out of ideas and then they would fade into sound and then move into another song. Whereas this Kill Devil Falls, it felt like Trey would throw out a line, Mike would throw out a line, Paige would throw out a line, Fishman would be right there, and it just kept going and going. The conversation just kept extending, and it was like sitting around a campfire where like every person brings up a topic that you all want to go deep on, and suddenly it's 3:00 in the morning. This was my favorite night in the history of the website Twitter because in Fish Corner, everyone was happy, everyone was positive. There was a guy filming via the Periscope app the entire show. I watched it on my couch with my dog while texting with people about how great like Fish sounded at this point in time. It felt like another level had been reached within the overall comeback, and it all kind of felt centered around this show. But there were still 2 weeks of highlights.
Yeah, this show's great. I got to pick this one for 40 for 40. And the reason I picked it was because I was listening to it in the car and my daughter Mia listened to this show with me. And then afterwards she was like, okay, I think I want to see Fish. So this show will always have a special place in my heart because it turned my daughter, it made her somewhat interested. I wouldn't say she's in, but she's interested now because of this. And there's so much playfulness and zaniness and silliness and instrument switching and on our backs and being wild. And it's just got that 90s energy, but also just has deep fucking jams and really beautiful played classics. Like here's something like The Wedge, how it's played in the show is just like, oh, it's so great. And yeah, I think that it's just such, I mean, the jam's incredible and it's super fun. And then you get a twist too, which is really, really great as well. Like it has the same democratic patient feeling, but it is totally different vibe than the Kill Devil Falls. And it's really jazzy and contemplative and it's absolutely beautiful. I love when they play a monster jam and then they still have ideas left. Super exciting.
Yes. Yeah, I mean the set ends with Twist into Back on the Train into Reba, and that is an actual like segue into
Yeah.
Reba, and then Bathtub Gin, and it's all works. Like where would you who would write those 4 songs to end a second set? Like that's just insane.
No,
Like
I know.
like on paper it looks like what are we doing? Did the wheels fall off? And it all works perfectly. Every song was the right call.
There's so much of that in this tour, actually, like segues that just you would not expect to work that work. And then also just like weird set listing that flows. I don't know.
Well, that is a fantastic segue in and of itself because the next night there's another jam highlight that I would just love to throw
Yeah.
in the ring here. I feel like this segment of the show is going to be an hour long because there's a lot more of these. Tweezer goes for 26 minutes, doesn't have any interest in peaking. This is just Fish kind of talking at a lull. It's very mellow. It's really beautiful. It reminds me a lot of the 71099 Tweezer from Camden. That's just Tweezer floating in like the dream bath, you know, that like you like have like the lid closed on you and you're like floating in the water and you start to see like you start to hallucinate. Like that's what this Tweezer is. And then it perfectly goes into Waiting All Night, which is this like
yes.
we talk about new songs here. Like this is a new song in a jam landing spot, the kind of place that Lonely Trip would be today. And it just feels like Waiting All Night is emerging from a dream. It's so beautiful. It's so quiet. And it just shows kind of the dynamics of what this band could play with at this point in time, which you didn't hear as much earlier on. Like I keep saying that, but like that is a really important fact about this tour is up until this point, we kind of needed to hear the band play kinetic, like hypnotic jam one night that has so much energy and so much groove, and then one night later come out and just be like, here's ambient washes of sound, like bask in the glow.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the tweezer from Alpine from 8-9. It's just like in a groove and not like eager to go anywhere and just really mellow. I like that.
The tweezer is it's just beautiful and perfect, and again, like two inspiring, really long jams in a row is just wow. It's really
Sublime.
pretty,
Yeah.
yes, sublime.
Mhm.
So then I kind of feel like there's some kind of just making their way through. I mean, I do think the Nashville show is great, but to me the 8/7 show,
Yes.
from Blossom is
Yeah.
like,
The only thing I want to point out from the Nashville show is that Mike's, that's the return of the second jam.
Yep.
And it's definitely one of my favorite jams of this tour,
Mm.
just because it's really interesting, like super dynamic second jam. And it gets to a really beautiful spot with Paige on the piano. And it has that awesome segue into Piper. And then they play Cross-Eyed and then into Weekapog. And then they do that like funk slow down Weekapog fun thing. So that's a highlight from Nashville. But otherwise, I agree. It's pretty much straight to Blossom.
Historically important that show was, and it
Yeah.
felt meaningful in the moment. I think you're absolutely right, RJ. Go off about August 7th, because my God.
well, I mean, it's kind of, I feel like it's very repetitive. I mean, in my not the music, but my commentary, because first of all, it ends. This first set ends with a gin that I think is really, really awesome.
Yeah.
And then it sets up this chalk dust tweezer, which it's just, this chalk dust is like, it's exactly what I want from Fish. There's a build, it builds and builds, and it's very blissful, but also not just like relying on one peak. It's like this whole summer is just building toward these peaks that I just think just does it in a really great way. And then the tweezer is kind of a different take, more groove oriented, a little darker, and a complement to the chalk dust. But Page, this tour is just amazing, and you hear him like mixing in these different layers in these jams that just, I think, just makes this, like, this combo of chalk dust tweezer is just a really pretty perfect combo.
Yeah, I put this on the same level as the Kill Devil Falls. I think
Yeah.
it's just it's outstanding communication, very diverse jamming. I'm also just fascinated. I mean, the set has zero. There's not a single moment where there's no filler, is what I should say. Like, there's not a moment where they're taking a pause. The slow song in the set is Lizards or Makasupa. Like, that's the ballad, if you will.
Yeah.
And then they go right back into Ghost, Hood, and they keep Tweezer Reprise in the second set. It just flows really, really nicely. It's all classic songs. Chalk Dust, Tweezer, Lizards, Makasupa, Ghost, Harry Hood, Tweezer Reprise.
That's
Like,
sick. That's killer.
and outside of Ghost, all those songs would appear in a second set in like 1992, but never like this. Like, this is
Yeah.
they're tying the past of what, like, they're reaching in the past and they're looking towards the future at the same time. It's just it's unbelievable. I watched this on my couch in my parents' living room before I drove up to Alpine the next day, and I just, like, it was that moment you're talking about, RJ, because a couple of the shows in between Atlanta and this had been a little uneven, and it was like, okay, we're back, and what is possible now this weekend?
Yeah, this jam, this tweezer is definitely one of my top jams of the whole tour. It's just so much going on. It's so creative and interesting at every step of the way. And that ending, it's so pretty. And then it just rolls right into Lizards. This is one of the most beautiful segues. It's so pretty.
Yeah, it's really, man. So this is a great show. And then I guess to me, I know, Megan, you mentioned Alpine. There are 2 nights of Alpine right before they came back to the 2 nights of the Mann. It was cool that they were doing these 2-night stops, as they got further along. I think that works well. What do you have from Alpine, Megan? I thought that, again, like, there's an awesome tweezer. And the shows are fun they're fun shows, but I don't have a ton of highlights from the 8-9, 8 or 8-8 and 8-9.
No, I just think that tweezer is a really singular groove. It's really has like that one organism feeling to it, that jam. Really nice peak and then a perfect landing in dirt. But I mean, for me, you just skip ahead to the 8-12 man show is kind of what I think. Brian, you were there.
Yeah.
You were at Alpine. What were your thoughts about Alpine?
I thought night one was pretty. It was fine. There were like a couple moments. I was really stoked to get Mercury, and I really liked.
Mhm.
I think it was only the second or third Mercury played. They paired that with Maze before and Reba after, so it kind of felt a part of the larger catalog. But the second set was a lot of the type of stuff you would have heard 2-3 years earlier, where like an idea forms and hey, here's twist. Another idea forms. Oh, it's going to what's the use? It never felt like they were dedicated. The next night is one of my favorite attendance bias shows. The first set, I got my first Forbin's Mockingbird, so that was obviously really special in the moment. I really liked the Very Long Fuse, was glad to see that return. Saw it again, Esther, Way, Sloth, Sanities. Like those are some pretty rare songs. I think that this was like they were throwing out songs that hadn't been played in some time. The second set kind of similar to the night before, but the tweezer hints at Franklin's Tower and is really sweet. The Mike song had kind of a quasi second jam, but it was one of those shows that felt really good to be at. I mean, you went and hit play afterwards and you were like, I don't know if there's as much to like chew on here, which happens. The Mann show though, that is with Atlanta night 1, Ben night 2, Shoreline set 2, and a few others that we're going to talk about. That's a pretty perfect show, and I think it speaks to RJ's statement of peaks and valleys within this tour. Blossom I should throw in there as well, sorry, but like this is just fully in command fish. They take the stage. It's very intentional, it feels like, and they're just playing within a style of music that allows them to communicate and expand and jam in really cool ways. But RJ, I think you were at this show. Like, you should talk about it. No. Oh no, you were still in DC.
Yeah, I went to the MPP shows before Magnaball, but I was not at these shows. But
you
I
had
know
like a 2-year-old at this point, and so you were going to shows was.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? I
happening.
did make it to Magnaball, which was really just
You did.
fantastic. But
Good work.
But I mean, I think this the Fuego from the first night, the 2014 Mann Fuego was when the Mann that's when Fuego like really kind of became a jam vehicle. But
Totally.
this first night it's fine. There's a lot of songs, especially in the first set. It's like they skin it back, bust out. I mean, there's like so much happening here.
Mm-hmm.
Fairly like standard. But this second night, I mean, the fact that they get like, you go to Philly 12 years later and there's another like great Sense and Subtle Sounds. Who knows if any of that is intentional or not, but I think that the night 2, the cities and then the set 2 is just kind of perfect. Like the gin again has these great blissful vibes, and then the twist that comes later is a little bit different, and it's, and then the Sense and a Hood closer. It's a great set.
Yeah, I mean, It's Ice from the first set. I love that too. This jam is so great. Just incredible clav work from Paige, Manteca hints, and every song in set 2 is pretty much a great jam. Like it's just so great. And this twist is definitely one of my top jams of the tour. It's just unbelievable. It's super jazzy, super smooth. You've got that like buttery tone from Trey. It's so delicate and piercing. Gorgeous playing over like the loops and the sirens. Mike's just dropping these like dissonant bass bombs. It's just dark Middle Eastern vibes. It's an epic journey of a jam. I've played it like 4 times this week. I absolutely love it. It's definitely one of my top jams. Twist from the Mann. Good stuff.
Yeah. I got nothing to add other than just this is some pretty perfect fish.
Pretty perfect fish.
Pretty perfect fish.
The Walnut Creek show in between the Mann and the MPP shows, I feel like I didn't have like a lot there.
No.
But I feel like
Usually Fish does really well there.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite places to see Fish.
exactly.
I've seen Fish many times there. They usually fucking throw down. I don't know. Just, I mean, the Mann shows and the MPP shows are super strong. I mean, the 15th show is so great. So I don't know. It's a valley.
kind of a weird touring diversion too,
Yeah.
to go from Philly down to Raleigh and then back up to Meriwether. But yeah, Brian, you got anything?
The only thing I'll say about this show is I had friends come into town for the MPP shows, and we ordered pizza from my favorite pizza place in Annapolis, and we were sitting on my couch streaming the show. And with every song that started, we said, "Hell yeah, we won't get that this weekend." So sorry to everyone in Raleigh,
That's the
but
best.
I had a really good time being like, "Oh, sweet, no Yarmouth Road. Oh my god, this is incredible." Yeah,
It's so true.
I went into MPP night one. David Kelso here writes, "No love for Slow Llama." I that is a good point. I remember when that debuted as the opener, being like, "What the hell is going on here?" Because it's not like they come out and be like, "Hey, here's a reworked version of our classic song, Llama." Like you're just thrown into a slow groove, and you're like, "Wait, I know these lyrics, I know these chords. What the hell is going on?" I thought that was a really cool moment and kind of a fun reinvention of Fish's song catalog, which felt to me like, again, reaching in the past, looking to the future. That was a fun moment. But the next night is one of the most bonkers, insane, like old school throwdown Fish shows that I've ever seen. I took in set one with our good friend Jonathan Hart.
Nice.
Megan, I apologize from 9 years in the past, but after the Roguet, he turned to me and goes, "Did you feel that? That was a killer Roguet." But he didn't say Roguet because he would have said Roger. So
Roger.
sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I have to quote him properly. But that set, like the Big Black Furry Creature from Mars and Your Pet Cat and a Big Black Furry Creature from Mars. You talked about them being on their back at the Atlanta show. Like at one point, they like raised Mike's microphone stand all the way up, and he was like on his knees yelling, looking up in the heavens. The Run Like an Antelope is insane. The entire second set is like filled with segues and sandwiches. It has a gorgeous 46 days. It has a Piper that my wife and I walked out of the show after that Piper and said, we should include Piper in the naming of our child that's going to be in our lives. We didn't know it at the time. We thought they were going to be born on October 9th. Our son decided to join us on September 12th, and he has the middle name Piper as a result of this show. So this was some wild, crazy, awesome, big-hearted Fish here.
Yeah. I mean, the 46 Days jam is just, I mean, it's really, I remember just being like, this is in the moment, just it developing into that melodic groove, which is just so patient and then into Bug. It was just, that was definitely the highlight of those two nights to me. Although, Brian, like what you said about there's a lot of really interesting stuff that happens in the show, but that was just, man, it was just like an all-time moment for me, for sure.
Well, it's so crazy because you both mentioned so many things, but there's still there's like this beautiful, simple opener. They play Glide, and then there's like gorgeous playing from Page and McGrupp. I will say, like, the Roguet is really beautiful. And then they've got this fun stuff you talked about, Brian. They play Horn after the Big Black Furry Creature from Mars, which is like fucking perfect. And then this whole What's the Use Steam sandwich is just so cool. And then they played Tweezer NO2. It's just like, they just are like playing all the things. Like being at this show must have just been absolutely wild. It's so great. And then they've got the Great Walls of the Cave Closer, which I think is really nice. And then they're happy because they come out and play a Sleeping Monkey reprise. So it's just, this is a really perfect Fish show, I think.
I'm just looking on it. Sorry, but they played NO2 only 9 times. I've somehow seen 2 of them.
You've seen 2 of them? I don't think I've ever seen it. Let's see.
625.94, 7894 is what led into Gamehenge. 716.94, and then not again for 357 shows, 713.99, and then not again for 221 shows, 1231 2009. And then I saw 8/12/2010 from Deer Creek, another great attendance by a show. Man, I will yell to the heavens for 8/12/2010, and then you listen to it and you're like, I was not doing what you were doing that night, so I don't get it. And that's okay. And then it wasn't played for 202 shows, 8/15/15, and then it was played 9/6/15, and then not again until the numbers show 193 shows later, 10/28/2021. That's the last time it's been played. I figured that at
I've
least
never
had like
seen it.
30 or 40 performances. That's wild.
No, I've never seen it. It is very rare. And it's weird because when you do this tour, this great like top tours, we've heard it a few times. And so it's like a little deceiving thinking how many times they played it. But
Right.
yeah, I've never seen it.
It always kind of comes up in these like big moments in the band's
Yeah.
history.
I love that.
Okay, well, so I think because we did this episode differently than the others, we're gonna have to just take a break and then talk about Magnaball and Dicks, and then that'll be fine.
Yeah,
But
perfect.
I do want to address this comment from VT to boot about the Raleigh, and I was talking about the Mann and then going from the Mann to Raleigh and then back to Meriwether. Of course, there are like, radius clauses and whatnot, but we're talking about, so if they had gone directly, that would be the third. Basically, they delayed going to Baltimore by 2 days. Like I think most of these clauses in a contract are 10 days or 30 days, but to push it from 1 day to 3 days doesn't like
really
make much sense. So I mean, they might have just been whatever was going on in Raleigh, and they had an open night, and Fish likes going there. But I feel like to push going to Meriwether one night probably didn't have an effect on that. But I don't know.
I also wonder, because they play that random Tuscaloosa show after Atlanta, but like the normal routing would have gone Atlanta to Walnut Creek for that Sunday show, and maybe it was just booked at that point in time. So like to your point, RJ, they kind of play that every time they do a summer tour that goes through the East Coast. They always hit Raleigh. So it might have just been a scheduling thing. Because can't you imagine like Fish management like can get around those clauses by being like, hey man, like 45% of the people in the crowd were at the last show, regardless if it was like 8 hours away or like 15 hours away. Like they don't care, they're coming.
They're
coming.
And if they really wanted to prevent them from playing in the area, it would be a much longer period of time. But maybe the Raleigh risk usually pays off, and they were like, let's go down there for a Friday night show.
I do think that there is a conversation to be had, though. I think VT to boot brings up an interesting point of like how Fish works within this, because they have such a concentrated audience in an area that you would imagine there's like competing audiences like across the markets. Like they play like that Northeast corridor all the time. It'd be really interesting to hear like the backstories of how they work around that sort of stuff.
Well, maybe we can do that someday. But first, let's take a break and let's come back and talk about the rest of this tour. All right. We're going to talk about, notable shows of the tour, but we have Magnaball and Dicks left, and that was going to be talked about anyway. So, I mean, I think we've talked about, I guess, what can we say about Magnaball that hasn't already been said? Or what can we say about Magnaball in the context of this tour that makes it different than what has already been said about Magnaball, which is basically everything?
Well, I do have one question for you guys that just kind of came to me. Do you think Fish plays better tours when they're heading towards a festival?
No. I think summer 2018 is a good outlier for it. I think summer 2021 is a good, or excuse me, 2011 is a good outlier for it. I do think that, and I thought about this a lot through the summer 2015, it adds an element that ties them back to kind of, what you imagine summer 97 or summer 98 feeling, where the band's playing well and there's this big thing at the end that they're going towards.
Yeah.
I don't know. I would say I don't know.
Yeah, sorry. I don't really know either. That's why I wanted to ask you
I wish
guys.
I had an opinion.
I think
Yeah.
it was easier to define this then than now
Yeah.
when like they haven't played a festival since Magnaball,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
they've played some just truly outstanding tours in 4.0 that have nothing to do with the festival. They have these other things. They have Dicks, they have the Sphere.
Exactly.
I think it'll be interesting to hear what they're planning, because they're definitely planning something for Mondo Green, and that's going to
Yeah, yeah.
impact their
It's gonna
sound.
be
We
great.
know those things work together. Think about like the Sci-Fi Soldiers and the sound in 2021. Like whatever they're
Exactly.
planning is going to have an impact here. Will that make this tour better than last summer? That would be a huge step up. Last summer was a
Yeah.
really great tour.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so curious. I just think that there's such a on this tour, there's so much kind of renewed energy for lots of reasons we talked about. But I do think that Magnaball is such an achievement, and it feels like kind of like a crowning at the end of this like just really fantastic tour. And listening to the drive-in set yesterday, I was coming on vacation. I was listening to the drive-in set on the plane while I was reading, and it's a really amazing piece of music, and it stands alone on its own, which is just so exciting to listen to 9 years later.
Yeah, I do think just the one thing that I think of now, after I you know, said I didn't have anything to say, is that I do think like the anticipation grows, you know. So I think it's like better
Mhm.
for, I think it's like exciting for fans just to be able to think about how those things work, like the sound. What are they what are they planning? What, you know? I think it creates like a lot of excitement for fans. I remember like the outside the shows at Merriweather, people were just like, it was very exciting to know that we were going, you know,
Yeah,
that we were going to Magnaball. Like it was really that part I think is super exciting.
I think
I would
so
also
too.
just like to nominate August 2004 as another lead up to a festival as a counter to Megan's thought here. But I would also like to say the Incredible Perp here has a good point. I think the ramp ups to Halloween shows is more of a thing than
Yeah.
festivals. I don't know if it's more, but I would say like MSG last year, that residency, kind of like a modern fish festival. Like I think to
Yeah.
RJ's point, they keep giving themselves goals to achieve, and by it setting those goals, which used to just be the festival at the end of a summer tour, they're they're having to kind of show up a little bit earlier to achieve that. Like they couldn't come into
Yeah.
MSG playing 50%. They had to come in there like throwing heaters, which was evident by the second song Wave of Hope jam. Like
Oh
they were
my
already
God.
there, which had been building over the course of that tour.
Yeah.
I can't even believe
Yeah.
that was last summer. Those shows fucking rocked. But yeah, I feel like what the Incredible Purpose saying is very true, and I think that that's obviously because of the musical lift that the Halloween shows are. You know, there's such a musical drive and like a focus. But yeah, I think whenever Fish is working towards something big, it pays off. And I think they're
Yeah.
really excited about Mondegreen this summer. So I
Yeah.
think it will.
Yeah. What I think that the 822 show gets like all the attention from this festival, but the setup from 821 is it's pretty great. I mean the chalk dust again in the second set is just another really um great way to set up another really solid set.
The first set too, I love how it's bookended with jams. You have like the simple opener, which is
Yeah.
beautiful. It's only 11 minutes, but it feels really exploratory right away. And then the set ends with the bathtub gin, like 23 minutes, multiple sections, rocking, funky. It's like fuzzy at times. It's just like such a great way to play a first set of your festival. Just start
Ridiculous.
and end that set with jams. So good. And the Ghost is nice in that set too. And I like the No Men's too. Playing some big stuff like your first show in a festival is really awesome. Playing
Yeah.
a lot of your big hits.
Yeah, I love this show. I think you're absolutely right. 822, that's the best day of Fish I've ever had in my entire life. And it started at
Oh
I
my
had
God.
great diner breakfast on 822 and then made our way over to the festival. I hung out with RJ. We had a
Yeah.
really good beer.
Yep.
And my wife, who was 32 weeks pregnant, was game to
Oh
hang
my
out for the
God.
drive-in set. And we had just like an amazing time in the cold with, I don't know, however many other people, but like taking in that incredible hour of Fish. But the first show, yeah, the second set just flows. It's like what we were talking about with Atlanta. It's like we were talking about with Mann Night 2, with Shoreline. it's just like every song is a big song, and it's the song that should have been played right there. And there's brilliant segues. The Ghost into Rock and Roll is a pure segue. No Men's into Slave is a pure segue. Having No Men's in that slot, you come out of the ballad, we've got 2 songs left before the set's over, and we come in with a new song, and that new song rules, and then it goes into one of like our most beloved old songs. It set the table for what was to come, especially over the next day. But I think that this is one of my favorite shows I've ever attended. And there were moments like when you realize that Kuroda had lit the trees. Once it got a little bit dark there, he had lit the trees, and that just added to the whole feel of the festival. And the festival is laid out so perfectly. I did not go to Super Bowl, and I did not attempt to go to Curveball. I was living out west by that time. This is the last festival I've been to, and probably the last fish festival I'll end up going to. It was so stress-free, and like the way that everything was structurally set up, going from that to 11 or 9 years earlier being at Coventry, it was just 2 completely different fish festival experiences. My God, amazing stuff.
What else do we?
Dude's not wrong.
I know. So
I just wanted to say that these stories about Magnaball, like when I hear both of you guys talk about Magnaball, which I did not go to, I've never been to a fish festival. It is the reason why I am like dead set on making Mondegreen happen, because of these stories that you guys tell of Magnaball. So thanks for that.
Yeah, well, I feel like for Magnaball, like the previous festivals, maybe the way Curveball ended up, they changed the way they look at festivals, because I think besides the drive-in jam, like they always have that cool secret set, but it feels like now they're thinking about it more as like a thematic thing, which is really interesting, which I think Mondegreen's going to be something, pretty amazing. Okay, so Tweezer Caspian, that happened.
Yep.
Pretty great.
Many glow sticks were thrown, many hugs were given. It was that is one of the few, like that and the Dicks Light I felt like I was crossing a World Series win with fish, and it was so fucking awesome.
Yeah.
I do want to, we have to talk about Dicks. The only thing I want to say about night 3 is the what's the use being there, and to hear however many people were there, I don't know, 50,000, 60,000, however many people were there, be almost completely quiet in like the middle of what's the use was just pretty amazing. It's one of my like lasting memories from that whole weekend. It's just how like the entire crowd was just quiet. It was so awesome.
I caught 3 what's the uses on this tour: Alpine, Merriweather, and Magnaball, and you could just tell that they were getting more comfortable in the silence within that. And you're absolutely right. Like nobody was talking. The jam chart notes say dies away to a near hush at the 2-minute mark, then wonderfully explodes back to life. The Kent 94 hood version of what's the use ? And proof that you really can teach an old dog new tricks. Like this was when what's the use became like the song that it is today. I'm just pulling up the stats on it. It's been played 65 times. Prior to this, it was played like 5 times in 5 years. And then since 2015, I mean, you just like are endlessly scrolling. It's pretty much on like a 5-show rotation now permanently, because just figured something out with it. And now it is a really nice breaking point within a lot of second sets. I've seen so many since this point in time.
So good. And I love how it goes into dirt in this version.
Yeah. For those of you who are wondering what Kent 94 means, they're talking about the 11-12-94 Harry Hood from Kent State in Ohio. Brian, what do we need to know about those 3 Dicks shows?
I think that it's the only time that Dicks has really felt like an afterthought. Did you guys lose me? It's the only time it's really felt like an afterthought in the overall tour. I think that there's some great moments within it that kind of extend the jamming from Summer Tour, specifically the Blaze On and Golden Age from night 1. I think the second set from night 2 is that kind of fluid press play, no skips type of second set that we've been talking about throughout this. And then night 3 has one of those rare moments where the band kind of acknowledges, they say kind of the quiet part out loud. You know, we usually end a
Yeah.
Fish summer tour and people are like sad and they don't want it to end, but you know, like it's time to get back to our lives and we'll plan for the next tour. And this tour really feels like a moment where the band realized like something really special happened here. The fan base realized it. Everyone was kind of aligned on the same page. And you get this encore that is just as direct of a, we couldn't do this without you. We are so thankful for you. You've pushed us, you accept us, you change with us, you grow with us, you allow us to take these massive risks, you allow us to tell these stupid jokes up here that you all laugh at, which they're not really that stupid. They're really funny. But like it was as much of like Fish kind of stepping into this elder statesman role that happens towards the end of that third night. So like, whereas you get the whole run is kind of a, should the tour have just ended at Magnaball? Probably, but like Dicks rules, and anyone who has been to Dicks knows that like it's an awesome cap to the summer. But you get this one moment at the end where the band is kind of acknowledging like, we know how special this is to you guys. We know that we almost lost this. We know you guys almost lost this whole thing. It's now back, and if you look at where Fish has been since summer 2015, you know, it's like the fucking Dow Jones. Yeah, there's like little blips, but like, man, that thing is skyrocketing, and you just like better jump on in, because you may hear some Dicks Night 4s 2023, but you know what? You're also going to hear Dicks Night 1 2023, and you're going to be good in the long run. The lulls are going to be okay.
I wonder if, you know, Trey was so in his feelings and feeling that way and feeling more reflective after playing Fare Thee Well and thinking about, you know, just must have been so intense playing Jerry's roles
Totally.
and knowing what happened to Jerry and like just what happened to the Grateful Dead and just sitting in that and being a part of that history and it must have made him really reflect like, fuck, I'm so lucky that I'm healthy. The band is healthy. I have all 4 members of the band here. We get to play like this. We get to play fucking killer jams. Like, I just think that like that combination of Trey being so practiced and just a real appreciation for what Fish is and what Fish could be is just something that really motivated and inspired this tour in a way that is pretty singular and exciting. And it's so meaningful to hear him say that, like you're saying, Brian, out loud. It's, you know, you hear Trey talk about this in interviews or you know that they feel this way, but when they come out and say it so explicitly and do an encore like that, it's beautiful. When I listened to it, I teared up and I wasn't there. I didn't see it in the moment, but listening back to it, and I've obviously heard it many times before, but it is so special and so direct and intimate. And it's just a moment that's a really important moment in the Fish world.
Yeah. That's a really good. Those are great points on that. The only thing musically I think we should mention is that this and the Fishnet Jam chart mentions it, that for the 5th year in a row, 5th straight year, Fish delivers a chart-worthy performance of Chalk Dust Torture. That's the Saturday show, which is
Chalk Dust and Dicks, man.
Yeah, fifth year in a row. That's hard to do, you know?
Yeah.
That is hard. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, some of the best jams of the 3.0 era came out of Chalk Dust at Dicks. Like, I know you love that 2013 version.
Yeah.
That is just a stunner. 2012 is one of my favorite jams I've ever seen. 2014 is really good stuff. I mean, yeah, Chalk Dust, when it was played at Dicks, and it's still to this day, like it tears the place apart.
Really fun. Dicks is great. I need to go back there. That's my main takeaway.
Well, you have a free place to stay, and you've got breakfast burritos. And now that I have the Blackstone flat top, you've got hash browns in the morning.
Oh,
and
shit.
Smash burgers post show. I mean, come on, dude.
Show Dad is ready to go.
Yeah,
I'm ready. I'm all ready.
Post show burgers might be what actually flips it.
That would 100% bring me out. If someone gave me a fucking burger after a show, I would love them forever.
This is amazing. All right, guys. So, well, I have a voicemail I want to play in looking forward, but what are your takeaways from this tour?
I have one. It's kind of big and a little bit hyperbolic, but I want you guys to
Nice.
like entertain me
Perfect.
here. So thinking of the 3.0, 4.0 period as one big era, we're 15 years in since Hampton 2009. I would track 7 periods where the band has reset the possibilities for their career going forward. Like if you take the flat line of like, hey, we're just happy they're back in 09,
Yeah.
and then the kind of ups and downs that happened at that period. Since then, I would track summer 2012, fall 2013, summer 2015, the Baker's Dozen, 2021, both tours, spring 2023, and what just happened at Mexico and the Sphere in 2024, as these 7 periods where like we kind of went into this era thinking Fish was one thing, they did something else, and we were like, oh my god, like what else? What is the possibility? What else is there? Firstly, are there any eras that you think I'm missing in that list, or any that I'm inflating inexcusably?
No, but I'd say maybe the Gamehenge New Year's Eve would be included in the kind of early 24 like
That's a good call.
phenomenon. But I
That's a
do
good
think
call.
musically, I like as I'm saying it, I disagree musically, but I just think it's kind of like a stepping stone to them
That's a huge moment.
continuing to build on. But I think musically, not so much. But no, I think it's so true, and I think it kind of speaks to what I was saying earlier about them needing like these touch tones to like keep them moving forward, and how important those are, and how almost evenly spaced they've been in a way, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, I don't have any disagreements with this.
So you're
We
saying I'm
support
right.
this list.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm
But
right.
yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
Let the audience know. Dave's no. To
it's an
me, what's
interesting point, though.
yeah, go ahead.
And I mean, I appreciate how you look at it from that perspective. I mean, there's so many like years and tours that just get kind of like left aside when we talk about Fish, and I think
Mhm.
I think for like the overall narrative of the band, like those touchstones and identifying those is helpful. Even though like the flip side is like every Fish show is great, you know, um, and every show you get to see is a gift, that
Yes.
is, but there's also like the point that you're making, which I think is helpful.
Yeah, and I mean, I think like just would they be playing today if they didn't have these touchstones? I think is questionable, because I think that when they
Mhm.
came back,
Yeah.
they wanted to find a balance, and they knew it was going to take work to really walk on stage and do what they did up until summer 2003 on a consistent basis, and really hit the audience over the head musically, while also nailing their parts and also being funny, and like having this show that felt like a lot of things could happen and anything could happen at once. This, to me, I've said it in this episode, but just to like put a pin in it, like it feels like where they cross into being elder statesmen, and
Yeah.
they are the band that is leading this genre into the future, but they are also redefining what that means to age as a jam band, because they have had a ton of creative reinventions over the last 9 years. Um, but have also, uh, you know, they're now the ones who are leading younger bands forward in a lot of ways. It's an interesting break period with the past and also with where we are today.
Yeah, and I would piggyback just to say, they might be playing today without these tours, but would they be playing the way that they are?
I don't
As
even know if they
inspired?
I
Yeah.
don't know if and we'll never know. I wonder if they would still be doing 40, 50 shows a year plus a festival plus
Yeah, no,
breaking in
for
the
real.
Sphere, if they were not breaking down new music. I think if we were still seeing like the 2011 version of Fish today, I don't know if we're still seeing Fish. I think that they
Yeah,
needed to know that they could take a step forward.
totally.
You know what I mean? Like they're too ambitious and too proud, and they're too critical of themselves in ways that they've had to work through throughout their career that allows us to have that joy where every show is a gift because they walk on stage and they feel it. And that
Yeah.
takes a lot of practice and a lot of focus.
Well, they're true artists, and I think to create art, you have to feel like it's authentic and genuine and inspired. And I think these tours gave that to them.
Okay, can I play you guys a voicemail?
Please.
Yeah.
This is just, I thought this was an interesting one that does not address what we're talking about today, but here we are.
Hi, my name is Evan. I have comments about 2 tours coming up, assuming you're going to cover them, Fall 97 and Fall 21. First, let me say that because I missed all of 2.0 and all of 3.0, this series that you're doing has been awesome. I love it. This is wonderful. So Fall 97, 12/5/97 in Cleveland was my first show. I think maybe a couple of you were there.
Brian was just
And
talking about it.
understandably, it gets ignored because it's sandwiched between legendary shows. But this was a special, weird show.
So
Opens
fun.
with a ripping ghost.
That's amazing.
Second set includes a 17-minute Julius that goes to unexpected places, which is unfinished. And so is The Slave, which follows immediately. Just a weird show. If you know all the great hits from that tour, check out 12/5/97. In Fall 21, a friend of mine who had a terminal illness asked all his buddies to meet him in Vegas for the fall Halloween run. I had been gone from the fish scene for 21 years, saw some amazing 1.0 shows, including Big Cypress, and then, I don't know, life took a different direction. But that 10/29/21 show, the second night of Vegas, was so breathtaking to me that it brought me back to the scene with a vengeance. And a few months later, my friend died. And his last gift to me was to bring me back to this beautiful music and this amazing scene. And I'm so grateful to Fish, and I'm so grateful to my buddy Jeff for bringing me back. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have seen Gamehenge or gone to the Sphere or met new amazing people. So 10/29/21 is a very special show for me and musically. Again, thanks for all you're doing. This has been awesome.
Wow, what a nice message.
Yeah. Really, really, really great.
Yeah, that really hits at it. And I will promise when we get to Fall 97, I will listen to 12/5/97 in preparation. I agree with everyone who says that Julius and Slave rules. I agree 100%. Amazing shit. My only counter is 2 songs do not maketh a show, do they? So I will listen, and if I'm wrong, I will admit it live on air. But that was really, really a heartfelt message, especially that last part. I think that's the other cool thing about this tour 2015 is, there was something bigger here because, like you said, Meg, like Trey stepped into Jerry's shoes, and there was something really heartfelt about that, and there was something about that experience that touched what he went through a decade earlier, with what Jerry went through, with what a lot of people in the scene went through. And Trey was now in a healthier and better place personally and survived something that he might not have. And this felt like a rebirth on the other side. And now we've had so many opportunities for people like this to come to share Fish along with sharing stuff happening in their lives. And it allows for just a really special bleeding of experiences. Just amazing.
So I just want to tell you guys, first of all, thank you for that message. Second of all, that Friday, Saturday, Sunday, the 5th, 6th, and 7th of December 97 was just an incredible 3-night run. The Ghost opener, there were candles burning on the stage, and the lights were completely down toward the end of the jam before they went into Wilson. It was a memorable time. But cool. Okay. So next week we are off. I'm going to see Goose twice, and then we're going to talk about it. That's not why we're off, but we're just building in a week here to catch up. But we have on the week of the 5th, 2 weeks from now, we'll be talking about the number 12 ranked show by us and number 11 ranked show by the fans. So we're getting in sync here. We're going to be talking about Winter 99. which is going to be really, really fun conversation. And then we have another show the next week, and then we'll be doing quick hits of some kind from basically mid-July through Dicks, and then we'll come back and finish off the 10 remaining tours in September. So we already have our entire year planned out, mostly thanks to Brian. So thank you, Brian.
All thanks to Brian.
We'll be doing some updates because we now know that there will not be a fall tour.
Sure.
And so
Yeah,
we don't
yeah.
have to
Oh,
hold
yeah.
dates for that. So I will be updating the fall schedule so that we have a little bit more time for those of us who like to cram week to week. You might
I
be a
will-
psychopath if that's how you live your life, but hey, that's how some people choose it.
I'm
It's
going to
more
be
a matter of necessity. Some of us
I'm just
cannot
gonna
listen
use
to
shit.
music during the day. It's
This
fucking
is true.
torture.
This is true. I do not oversee a classroom of how many third graders do you supervise
14
for the
usually.
Yeah, that's insane. I commend you for that work with a
Thank
child who's
you.
about to go into third grade. I don't know how
Yeah.
you do it. Having 13 more of that, my God. But I
the
will
only thing I
update
want to
this
say is that
because-
Megan has
yeah,
all
yeah.
summer.
all summer. The
That's
entire
the
summer.
only-
Okay.
that's the only
okay,
counterpoint.
it's
That's
true.
the only
It's
counterpoint.
true. I'm gonna just listen to so much fucking Fish this summer, and I'm gonna get so ahead of you guys, and I'm gonna have all my notes done. No, the problem is I won't remember it. That's the problem. I
Right,
can't do it.
right.
I'm not like Brian. I can't like listen to these like 2 months in advance and remember
know,
it. So
I know.
mm-mm.
I know. But I am excited that we only have 14 shows in the winter 99 tour. It does not include
Thank
Big
God.
Cypress. I'm
Thank
gonna
God.
enjoy a week of not listening to Fish, and it's gonna be great. But yeah, I guess Brian, we can revisit the calendar for the later
Mhm.
part of the year. But it's we got we're enjoying this quite a bit. So thank you guys for tuning in.
It's the best.
Super
It's gonna be
fun.
a fun fall.
Super fun. Okay. Anything else we need to say before we go?
You guys enjoy your week off. I'll miss texting with you guys and talking about fish, but we'll be back.
We'll be back.
We won't text at all probably if we're not talking about fish at
No,
all,
not at all.
including
No,
not in
mm-mm.
like 5 minutes from now. All right. Well, thank you guys all for tuning in. This was super fun, and as always, and thanks everybody for watching live and for listening. Give us a review. I also should have said at the very beginning, if you're still listening to us, it means you really like it, which is great. We're re-releasing Under the Scales episodes, and consider supporting us. OsirisPod.com/premium, $5 a month. It really helps us out. Okay. I think that's everything.
That's it.
Have a good
That's
rest
it.
of your Sunday. Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.